number 10 spot, we have the EnviroPigs. Scientists have recently created a new kind of pig. The pig that they created can absorb phosphorus in its body. Why is this important, you may ask? Well, scientists discovered that when pigs poo, I'm classy, really. When pigs poo, they release a large amount of phosphorus into Mother Earth, and that makes her extremely unhappy. And so it became important for scientists to figure out a way to reduce this. Well, they did, and the genetically engineered pig they created absorbs most of the phosphorus in its body. I believe that this creation may be the first step in creating a pig army that could be used to take over the world, as pigs have a lot in common with humans. A pig army is definitely terrifying, and I really hope that's not the result of this. Let's move on. In our number 9 spot, we have the zombie dog. This one kind of makes me sick to talk about, but it has to be done. If you're a dog person, maybe cover your ears. In the 1940s, some Soviet scientists were apparently bored. Yep, bored, and decided to take the head off of a dog and put it on another animal's body. With some blood transfusion and oxygen pumped to the brain, their experiment was actually successful as the dog came back to life, and he even tried to lick his own nose. This experiment arguably poses a danger to the world's sanity, as dogs are the best creatures ever, and it's just horrible that this was done. But apparently the science community has stated that this experiment did show some signs of hope in terms of finding solutions for people who are hemorrhaging blood too rapidly to be saved by conventional means. In our number 8 spot, we have featherless chickens. This one is literally terrifying to look at, but also kind of terrifying if people are going to ingest this in the future. This is a new kind of chicken that scientists created that is featherless. It's fewer calories and higher protein. Sounds like every weightlifter's dream. But don't get too excited about this, because apparently these kinds of chickens are more prone to health conditions and are more likely to have parasites. Lovely. Well, this might be the meat that kills the world then. I hope if they do end up mass producing these kinds of chickens that they put on the label featherless chicken. Then people will have an option if they want to take the risk or not. I'm sure they'll do their best to correct this issue before giving it to humans to eat. But then again, actually I take that back. I don't have that much faith in our food suppliers. People get ill all the time from meat and they just do a mass recall and that's it. Anyways, buyer beware. In our number 7 spot, we have the new sudden death mosquito. Honorable mention. Okay, so before you go hide under the covers, you know, something I want to do like all the time, just know that the name of these mosquitoes, it's not as scary as it sounds. A mosquito was created to be essentially an anti-disease mosquito. As mosquitoes carrying malaria is a massive problem in African countries, scientists wanted to try to combat this issue and create a mosquito that would kill other mosquitoes, which eventually would extinguish the species in a few years. Of course, the major problem would be that it would completely disrupt the entire ecosystem that they are a part of. The mosquitoes help provide food for fish and birds and so many amphibians and insects, and also in indirect ways for some animals, so it really just wouldn't be good if they were wiped out. Even though honestly it would be nice to not be bitten alive every summer. They love my blood. In our number 6 spot, we have the spider silk goat. Okay, the idea of a spider goat existing is probably the most terrifying thing to imagine, and if such a thing did exist that had half spider features and half goat features, I would probably cry. However, in the case of this experiment, that isn't exactly what happened. A creature was created that looked like a goat and had so many regular qualities that would make it a goat, but the one difference is that it actually made spider silk protein in its milk, and it could be spun to make spider silk. This is potentially really great for us, as spider silk can produce such valuable things such as bandages that are superior and bulletproof armor. But yeah, if they ever create a goat with spider features, I think the world would be in extreme danger. At least our ability to stay sane would be at risk, for sure. In our number 5 spot, we have the human pig. Ah, the human pig. Yeah, I bet some of you haven't heard of this one, and I mean, it doesn't exist anymore, but it did for 28 days before scientists shut down the experiment, so Yeah. An experiment was done to create a human-animal hybrid by injecting human stem cells into a female pig. As I said, it was for 28 days, but that's 1/3 of a pig's pregnancy, so the fetus was sufficiently developed before it all got shut down. They were not ready or prepared to deal with the unpredictable outcome if the human animal went to term, and they just kept it alive enough to understand how the cells interact with each other. Can you imagine a pig with a human brain alive and roaming free in this world? No, I can't. That would definitely be so dangerous, especially if it had pig instincts. Some pigs eat their babies. Enough said. In our number 4 spot, we have the glowfish. Glowfish are not necessarily a danger to us human beings, but most likely a danger to themselves. Let me explain. The glowfish are fish that have been created as a result of gene splicing, and yes, they glow in the dark. Pretty awesome. However, not so much for them. Why? Well, if they're released into the wild, then they will be extremely vulnerable, as predators will be able to easily spot them because, well, they glow, and they will be gobbled up easily. Even though there are already fish out there that naturally glow, so they already have to deal with this problem, what is the point of creating a new fish that will also be gobbled up? I don't know. In our number 3 spot, we have Rupee. Rupee is a genetically engineered clone dog that is extremely cute. So cute. The world's first cloned beagle, to be exact. He's one of 5 beagles that were produced by a Korean scientist by the name of Byung-Chung Lee. He was cloned by using a viral transfection of fibroblast cells with a protein that allows him to glow red in the dark. Yes, like the devil, because they are demon dogs. Okay, fine. This cloned species doesn't seem to threaten the world, but it will threaten all of those out there that get bothered by fluorescent light. Okay, this was just a scientifically created species that I wanted to give an honorable mention to because they are so cute. But seriously though, this is a big step forward for scientists working to cure human diseases, as these dogs are the first modified genes cloned successfully. So really, this creation could be the beginning of curing the world instead of endangering it. In our number 2 spot, we have fast-growing salmon. Scientists at Aqua Bounty created a genetically modified salmon that grows extremely fast. This new kind of salmon has the same odor, color, texture, and flavor of standard salmon, but it is able to grow twice as fast because of a growth hormone that stays activated throughout the entire year. But some believe that this could be dangerous to eat, and as of yet, we are unsure as to how safe it is. The FDA have not approved this kind of salmon just quite yet, so perhaps it's better to stay clear until the green light is given. Could be dangerous to the world. In our number 1 spot, we have the landmine detecting plant species. Yes, you heard me correctly. Scientists have genetically engineered a plant that can help us detect where landmines are in the world. You might not realize how big of a problem this is, but it is estimated that about 70 people die per day because of unknown landmines that were placed in different areas around the world during the previous wars. I actually know someone personally whose brother died because of a landmine explosion, which is pretty insane. So the fact that a group of scientists have created a plant that could help detect them is so awesome. When it's near nitrogen dioxide, an ingredient known in explosives, the plant turns red. That will show us where the landmines are so that they can be removed more safely or even just avoided. The landmines are a danger to the world, and this plant could actually be life-saving. So this spot might be the reverse of the title of this video, but this kick-ass new plant species needed an honorable mention.
Biolab in South Carolina let 43 monkeys escape, and it just so happens those monkeys were being used for virus and bioweapon research. A biotech company just recently resurrected the dire wolf, and back in the 60s, a winged creature with glowing red eyes haunted a town for a year, then vanished just as soon as it appeared. These are times scientists created creatures they couldn't control. In November of 2024, chaos broke out at the Alpha Genesis Research Facility in Yamasee, South Carolina, when 43 rhesus macaque monkeys escaped after a caretaker reportedly left a door unlocked. The monkeys ran off into nearby wooded areas. 35 were rounded up pretty quickly, but 8 of them were on the loose for weeks. These macaques are very intelligent animals, and this was concerning because they can carry diseases transmissible to humans. So folks were pretty concerned as days turned into weeks. But what exactly were these monkeys being used for? Well, the facility does research involving viruses, bioweapons, so yeah, this was starting to sound like the beginning of Planet of the Apes. Meanwhile, animal rights groups were all over this, calling out the lab for being sloppy and putting the public at risk, and of course, they were already pissed about monkeys being tested on in the first place. In the end, all the monkeys were safely recaptured, but this was definitely not a good look. In early 2025, Colosso Biosciences made headlines after announcing that they had successfully brought back the direwolf, or something like it. Using advanced gene editing, they took gray wolf DNA and basically tweaked it until it resembled the long extinct direwolf. Bigger build, stronger jaws, different fur. Not exactly a clone, but close enough that it was a pretty big deal. The company called it de-extinction. Some scientists called it more of a Frankenstein DNA project, but either way, the animals are real. They're alive, and they're not planning to keep them in a lab forever. Colossal said the goal is to reintroduce these wolves into the wild at some point to restore balance to certain ecosystems, but that raised a ton of red flags. First off, no one really knows how they're going to behave in the real world. What happens if it mates with modern wolves, throws off the predator-prey balance? There's also the question of what happens if these things turn aggressive. Colossal insists that they got it under control, but when you're resurrecting an ancient predator in a lab, some people feel pretty iffy about it. Not me though, I think this is awesome. Between 1966 and 1967, people in Point Pleasant, West Virginia kept reporting something strange. A tall creature with glowing red eyes. It was humanoid, but it also had giant wings. They called it the Mothman. Some said it chased their cars, others claimed it flew over buildings or hovered near the old TNT plant outside of town. Dozens of reports came in over the course of about a year. Then in December 1967, the Silver Bridge suddenly collapsed during rush hour, killing 46 people. And this is when the Mothman legend really exploded, because some claimed that they'd seen the creature perched on the bridge just before the disaster. One of the biggest rumors surrounding the mysterious Mothman creature is that it was the result of a messed up government experiment. But whether it was a misidentified bird or something else entirely, nobody ever got a solid explanation. In April of 1973, a man named Henry McDaniel from Enfield, Illinois, called the police in a panic, saying that some bizarre creature had tried to break into his house. He said it had 3 legs, short arms, and glowing red eyes. He fired at it, but said it just jumped away unfazed. A few days later, some local kids said that they saw something similar near an abandoned house, and pretty soon word spread and people from outside the town started showing up, hoping to spot it. Some thought it might have been an escaped kangaroo, others leaned into the weirder theories, like it being a government experiment that got loose, or something not of this world at all. Interestingly, the area was near a military base, so that definitely helped with the government experiment angle. Government tried to downplay the whole thing, of course, but people who saw it stuck to their stories. Even the cops admitted that McDaniel didn't seem like someone making things up. To this day, nobody really knows what happened that spring. In the summer of 1988, a teenager in Lee County, South Carolina, claimed that this huge creature attacked his car near Scape Ore Swamp. He said it was about 7 feet tall, covered in green, scaly skin, and had glowing red eyes. His car was damaged, there were these deep scratches all over it, and his side mirror was busted. Not to mention that the kid was clearly shaken up. Police wondered if he was just making up the story to cover up an accident, but this was a pretty lame excuse to come up with. I mean, a lizard monster attacking your car? They didn't pay it much attention, but after that, more people started coming forward with similar stories. One woman said something ripped the chrome off her car. Another man claimed he saw the thing staring at him from the edge of the swamp. Locals started calling this creature the Lizard Man. Police started looking into it now as more reports just kept rolling in. One of the sillier explanations at the time was that people were actually seeing a bear, which is a pretty lazy explanation. Again, there's an escaped lab experiment theory for this one as well. As fast as it started though, the sightings stopped. It's since become a local legend. As for what people were really seeing though, who knows? I can safely say it probably wasn't a bear though. In 2021, a biotech company called Oxitec released genetically modified mosquitoes in the Florida Keys. The goal was to reduce the population of Aedes aegypti mosquitoes, which spread diseases like dengue and Zika. These lab-engineered male mosquitoes were designed to mate with wild females, passing on a gene that would prevent their offspring from surviving to adulthood. The idea was that over time the mosquito population would decline, but the plan didn't go exactly as planned. Some scientists were worried that the gene might not be as lethal as expected and that some offspring would survive and potentially create a hybrid population. And how would the reduction of one mosquito species affect predators or allow potentially more dangerous mosquito species to overpopulate? Even with these concerns though, the project moved forward and millions of genetically modified mosquitoes were released. It's only been a few years, so the long-term effects remain to be seen. In August of 1955, a woman named Naomi Johnson went swimming in the Ohio River near Evansville, Indiana, and came out with a story that's still being talked about today. She said something grabbed her from below, yanked her underwater, and tried to drag her down. She fought her way free and made it back to the surface, but her leg was covered in scratches and stained with this green slimy residue that wouldn't wash off for days. That alone would have made it a weird local mystery, but then it's just got stranger. Naomi later claimed a man in a military uniform came to her house, said he was with the US Air Force, and told her not to talk about what happened. No official report was filed and nobody could explain what she'd seen. Some people connect this to UFO sightings in the area around that time, saying it could have been part of a larger cover-up event. Others think that this was just a case of someone getting tangled up with a big fish or a log or seaweed. Still though, doesn't really explain the military visit part. Very weird story. From the late 1990s up until 2013, people in the Swiss village of Mal kept reporting a strange figure walking through the woods. They called it Le Loyon, or the Ghost of Mal. Witnesses described it as a tall person in a military-style cloak wearing a creepy old-school gas mask. They'd be completely silent, never speaking, just walking the same path over and over. No one knew who or what this was. Then in 2013, someone finally snapped a photo. A few weeks later, the sightings stopped. All that was found was a pile of the costume left in the woods, along with a note that basically said the person behind it was sick of being harassed and misunderstood. Some say it was just a harmless eccentric who didn't want to be bothered. Others think it was performance art or some type of social experiment, but there's another theory that something was going on in those woods. I mean, why walk around in a gas mask unless there's a very good reason? Was there some sort of experiment going on? It's really strange, because if it was just a hoax, I mean, just, some weirdo dressing up to scare people, you'd think they would have called it quits way sooner, but this lasted over a decade. There are some real accidents connected to the Pope-like monster, but just what in the hell is the Pope-like monster? It's a creature said to haunt a train trestle bridge in Louisville, Kentucky. People who've claimed to see it describe some kind of goat-man hybrid, has hooves, fur, horns, and the face of a man. The story goes that it lures people onto the tracks using hypnosis or by mimicking people, and then they get hit by an oncoming train. It sounds pretty out there, but people have actually died on that bridge. The train line is active, and because of the legend, people started going there to try and spot the beast for themselves. In 2016, a young woman was killed while investigating the site with her boyfriend. Another person died years earlier under similar circumstances, and some say the creature is just a spooky story to scare kids away from a dangerous area, but the origin of the legend is still murky. It goes back decades with no clear first report. So was it made up entirely? Or did someone really see something weird out there in the woods once and the story just grew from there? Whatever the truth is, the combination of actual deaths and the eerie setting has helped keep the Pope-like monster legend alive. We've veered pretty far into the cryptozoology, urban legend realm, so let's talk about something a little more science-based and down to earth: synthetic biology in general. This is basically when scientists build or redesign living things from the ground up. Might tweak bacteria to make medicine or design microbes that eat plastic. It sounds helpful, and sometimes it is, but the problem is once you mess with life at that level, you can't always predict what's going to happen. There have been real concerns that some of these lab-made organisms could escape into the environment and do things they weren't intended to do, like spreading out of control, mutating, and wiping out other species. One example people talk about is modified yeast strains used to make biofuels. So tweaking the yeast genes so that it produces stuff like ethanol or other chemicals that can be used for fuel. Pretty cool. Even scientists working in this field admit that we're still figuring out the risks. Most of the time, things go as planned, but if just one of these creations gets out and starts doing something unexpected, things can spiral fast.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Vicente mouse. There's no easy way to say this. The Vicente mouse was a mouse with a human ear on its back. Well, not technically. The ear mouse was created by Charles Vicente and his colleagues at the University of Massachusetts in 1997. The ear on its back was actually an ear-shaped piece of cartilage grown by seeding cow cartilage cells into a biodegradable ear-shaped mold that was then implanted underneath the mouse's skin. But yeah, it's an ear, basically. So what was the point of all of this? Well, when the picture started circulating around the internet in the late 1990s, many people used it in protest against genetic engineering. However, no genetic manipulation was actually performed here. The whole point was to show that transplantation of fabricated cartilage into humans is possible. We have the Vicente mouse to thank for that, even if it does look very weird. Next up at number 9 now, we have the see-through frog. I love this one. In 2007, Japanese researchers succeeded in producing see-through frogs. The reason so that they didn't have to kill and dissect them anymore in order to study their organs, blood vessels, and eggs. How amazing is that? In modern times, dissections have become increasingly controversial. Many animal rights activists have called for more humane methods of studying frogs without having to perform dissections. Lead researcher Masayuki Sumida said, "You can watch organs of the same frog over its entire life as you don't have to dissect it." The researcher can also observe how toxins affect bones, livers, and other organs at lower costs. These frogs were created from rare mutants of the natural Japanese brown frog. They bred pale frogs together until the offspring were completely translucent. At the time, the researchers also said they could inject the frogs with an illuminating protein that would cause parts of the frog to glow when cancer starts. Imagine if they did that with humans. Interesting, but perhaps a little bit creepy. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Dolly the sheep. Some of you may have heard of this one before. Dolly was a sheep. She was also the first mammal to be cloned from an adult cell. She was born in Scotland after scientists from the University of Edinburgh did years of research and failed attempts. She was created using the technique of somatic cell nuclear transfer, where the cell's nucleus from an adult cell is transferred into an unfertilized egg cell that's had its nucleus removed. The cell is then stimulated to develop by an electric shock. The cell was then implanted into a surrogate mother and was eventually born into a healthy, normal-looking. The cell was then implanted into a surrogate mother and eventually became a healthy, normal-looking sheep called Dolly. It's a risky procedure and often results in stillborns or calves that last just a few days or weeks. However, Dolly was stable. The scientists waited almost 7 months to announce her to the world, but when they did, the news was everywhere. Many people called it the breakthrough of the year. This cloning paved the way for other large animal clones such as pigs, deer, horses, and bulls. In January 2018, scientists even successfully cloned macaque monkeys, the first primates ever cloned. Is human cloning around the corner? Next up at number 7 now, we have the glowfish. These are fish that glow in the dark. They aren't locked away in some lab away from the public eye. You can buy them. They are on the market. They are 100% for sale. In 1999, scientists in Singapore took the glowing gene of a jellyfish and inserted it into the embryo of an Indian zebrafish. The result was glowfish. They glow in both natural and ultraviolet light. This wasn't the ultimate goal for the scientists. They actually wanted to develop a fish that could detect water pollution by glowing in the presence of environmental toxins. They were then approached by Yorktown Technologies, who bought the right to sell the fish worldwide. They are sold in bright red, green, orange, yellow, blue, and purple fluorescent colors. Their names include electric green, moonrise pink, cosmic blue, and galactic purple. The FDA approved them for sale in the US once they assessed that they were not going to end up in the food chain. But still, if you see one, maybe don't eat it. That's just my advice for today. Next up at number 6 now, we have Ruppy. In 2009, scientists at Seoul National University created the world's first transgenic dog. Her name was Ruppy, and she glowed under ultraviolet light. Of course, the gene to glow in UV doesn't naturally occur in dogs. They got the gene from sea anemones. Ruby was created by cloning fibroblast cells that express a red fluorescent gene produced by the sea anemones. It was hoped that transgenic dogs like Ruppy would become effective stand-ins for the study of human diseases. Professor Lee Byung-chun led the research team and said, "What's significant in this work is not the dogs expressing red colors, but that we planted genes into them." Of course, he can say that, but the media and the world became obsessed with the idea of a dog that glowed when you shone a UV light on it. Other scientists criticized the process, saying transgenesis is laborious, expensive, and slow. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the sudden death mosquitoes. That's the name that's been given to these mosquitoes because essentially scientists have engineered them to possibly bring an end to their own species. Sounds crazy? This is how it works. They genetically modified male mosquitoes with lethal genes. Once released, the males mate with the females in the wild and release these lethal genes which kills them or kills the offspring before they can develop into adulthood. If successful, techniques like this could wipe out huge swathes of mosquito populations around the world or even bring them to extinction. The result isn't just because mosquitoes are annoying, it's to stop them from spreading the likes of dengue fever, which has no known cure and has put nearly half of the world's population at risk of infection. Of course, this is good news for humans. 2.3 million infections and 25,000 deaths could be prevented every single year. However, as bad as they are, some people are questioning whether humans have the right to intentionally kill off mosquitoes, an entire species. What do you guys think? Coming at number 4 now, we have the fast-growing salmon. In 2015, America's FDA approved Aqua Advantage salmon for human consumption. These are Atlantic salmon with an added gene which allows them to grow all year round instead of only during spring and summer. The intention has been to increase the speed at which the fish grows without affecting its ultimate size or other qualities. These fish can now reach their market size in 16 to 18 months instead of the usual 3 years. Despite the approval by the FDA and other governments around the world, it's unlikely that you'll be finding these special salmon everywhere. Back when they were approved, there was just 2 land-based facilities that were allowed to grow the fish. One day though, they could become the norm. Next up at number 3 now, we have the EnviroPig, a name that I absolutely love. In 2010, researchers at the University of Guelph created genetically engineered pigs dubbed the EnviroPig. Now on the surface, they look just like normal pigs, but it's not about the outside, it's about what's going on inside them. You see, normal pigs produce a lot of phosphorus in their urine and feces. That then finds its way into lakes, rivers, and oceans, causing algae blooms. The outburst of algae rapidly depletes the water's oxygen levels, creating vast dead zones that kill fish and other aquatic life. Not good. Pigs are often blamed for contributing to exactly this. These specially engineered EnviroPigs produce up to 65% less phosphorus in their urine and feces. This would make things better for the environment, but also for farmers. You see, many farmers had to abide by strict laws that allow no farms to release nitrogen or phosphorus runoffs. They usually have to store all the waste and wait for it to be treated and recycled as fertilizer. This is all just added costs for farmers. It's hoped that the EnviroPigs could change all that and do some good for the environment at the same time. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the sterile pink bollworm. Pink bollworms are a nightmare for cotton farmers. Every year they destroy cotton crops around the world. It got so bad that the US Department of Agriculture began tests to see if they could stop the worms in their tracks. They began growing a lot of pink bollworms in laboratories. That might sound counterproductive if your aim is to reduce their numbers, but wait, the male bollworms had actually been genetically engineered to be totally sterile, meaning even if they mated with a female, no offspring would come about. The worms were then released back into the natural population where they competed with wild male bollworms for the females. Scientists hope that if enough of these sterile males mate with the females, the number of offspring would be greatly reduced, providing some relief for cotton farmers around the world. And finally, at number 1 now, we have the see-through goldfish. In 2009, Japanese researchers succeeded in creating a goldfish that was so translucent you can see its heart beating inside its body. The aim was to create a fish that could be studied without the need for a dissection, the same reason for the frogs that we talked about earlier. Yutaka Tamaru, a professor of the study, said, "You don't have to cut it open. You can see a tiny brain above the goldfish's black eyes." Scientists created the fish using selective breeding. They took 2 natural fish who had slightly paler skin than the rest and bred them together. They continued like this with the offspring until the skin became so pale it was see-through. The fish are expected to live up to 20 years. They can grow as long as 10 inches and weigh more than 6 pounds. That's much bigger than fish used in similar experiments. They hope that for the people studying these fish, they can now see their whole life cycle take place underneath their see-through skin without ever having to hurt them.
Kicking off the list at number 10, EnviroPig. The EnviroPig was a transgenic pig developed in Canada at the University of Guelph, home of the griffins and the Frankenswine. Awesome, gotta love it. Welcome to Guelph. Scientists from South China's Agricultural University originally wrote a paper about the transgenic pig that can grow faster than normal and, on top of that, have less of an impact on the environment. Lovely. Live fast, little piggies. Now, normally these hogs would release a high percentage of nitrogen and phosphorus because they haven't evolved to digest those nutrients in their meals. These nutrients end up in their waste, which subsequently ends up in our lakes and rivers, and then in our mouths and eyes and nose. It would pollute the water with phosphorus, and that's when the EnviroPig scuffles in to save the day. Scientists alter their DNA in order to produce more phytase, in order for Frankenswine to fully digest all the nutrients, instead of leaving us the crappy ones, pun intended.
In our number 9 spot today, we have web-spinning goats. While many of us have dreamed of becoming Spider-Man, it turns out the only ones who get that luxury are goats. Researchers from the University of Wyoming have developed a way to incorporate a spider's silk spinning genes into goat's milk. This would then allow scientists to be able to harvest the silk proteins from the milk in order to use them. You might be wondering why, and that's a super valid question because it seems pretty random, but as it turns out, it actually might have some pretty exceptional uses. Spider silk is a super valuable naturally occurring material because it not only is strong, but it is flexible as well. These types of proteins can be used for medical things like making artificial ligaments and tendons or eye sutures, but it can also be used in other ways like to help build parachute cords or bulletproof vests somehow. Why didn't we just get that silk from the OG source? Well, you need a ton of spiders, and when you put a bunch of them together, they usually just kill each other, so naturally, goats were the next option?
Are you tired of losing your pet rabbits every time there's a blackout? Well, fear no more, this horrific treatment may just solve that problem. Back in 2000, an artist by the name of Eduardo Cac created this glow-in-the-dark rabbit in collaboration with French geneticist Louis-Marie Hodenbein. It was referred to as the GFP bunny, and it was this cute little albino floof that would glow under any blue light. Now, this glowing gal is named Alba, and what Hodenbein did was take the GFP gene found in a jellyfish, a certain type called Aquaria victoria, which rhymes, which is always awesome, but it would glow green when exposed to blue light. Now, Alba was a one-of-a-kind experiment, and it used the word "was" with sorrow. Alba sadly passed away in 2002, but her death has brought up a few questions. A US reporter called experts in France, where Hodenbein worked, and they were told that Alba had passed, but they didn't provide any substantial evidence onto how. No reason was given as to why this rabbit passed away. Now, you would think the world's first glowing rabbit would deserve more than, I don't know, maybe a voicemail to say, "Hey, it's dead, see ya." Maybe she's still alive. Maybe Hydra has her in some basement. Only time will tell. We'll see.
In our number 7 spot today, we have banana vaccines. Remember as a kid when you were sick and had to get medicine and it sucked, but then you found out it was the banana flavored kind and suddenly things weren't so bad? Well, this is absolutely nothing like that. Scientists have been able to successfully engineer different foods like bananas, lettuce, potatoes, and carrots to produce different vaccines, but apparently bananas are the most ideal candidate for this sort of thing. What's crazy is that with bananas, when an altered form of the virus is injected into the banana sapling, it ends up acting almost exactly like a traditional vaccine. Not the mRNA one that we're becoming familiar with the pandemic, but the kind used for things like hepatitis and cholera. This is because once the banana sapling is injected, the virus's genetic material then becomes a permanent part of the plant's cells. From here, as the bananas grow, the cells of it produce the virus proteins, but not the infectious part of the virus that makes you sick. So your body can now learn these proteins and then build up the antibodies needed in order to fight it. Honestly, this one seems a little weird on the surface, but I am all for the idea of vaccines one day not being given through needles. I don't like bananas either though, so guess I'm shit out of luck.
Number 6, spicy tomatoes. Picture this, you're at a barbecue, you're eating burgers with your peers, you're having a great time, and then somebody next to you starts coughing and you ask if they're okay, and they're like, "Oh, I'm fine, it's just, this tomato's just oh so spicy." Huh? Yeah, spicy tomatoes, they're a thing, let's talk about it. Scientists in Brazil and Ireland have cracked the condiment code, or so they thought. Using CRISPR, they created the first ever tomato that is naturally spicy. The trick is in its DNA. Tomatoes already carry the appropriate genes to produce capsaicin, which is the same ingredient that makes your mouth burn every time you eat a hot chili pepper. Some are on board with the spicy tomato, dare I say they're even excited to use this for some Saturday spicy salsa. Honestly, I'm all set for this. I eat a junior chicken and I'm like, oh, can I get a glass of milk? I'm not good with spice at all. It's all fun and games until a Greek salad lights up your lips.
In our number 5 spot today, we have DIY crisp
CRISPR-Cas9 kits. If you haven't heard of the controversial Josiah Zayner, he is the eccentric biochemist who is the owner of a startup company called The Odin. Josiah is no stranger to the world of genetic engineering, and in fact, he has done some experiments on himself when he injected himself with modified cells to become more muscular. He did this by removing the gene for myostatin, and without this gene, muscles keep growing. Regardless of this interesting experiment, what I really want to talk about is how the Odin has released CRISPR-Cas9 kits that allow you to experiment with genetic modifications yourself. I'm sure this is probably harmless, but it just seems like this kind of power should stay in the hands of those who know exactly what they're doing. Maybe that's just the skeptic in me, but there's something about a DIY genetic modification kit made by a guy who tried to modify his own muscles that just seems a little weird. No judgment, just not my personal cup of tea.
Number 4. Salmon. This photo shows a genetically engineered salmon next to farmed Atlantic salmon. They're both the same age, they're both 18 months old, but the one in the back looks like it's been bench pressing for 9 months. It's clearly much larger, and that's because Aqua Bounty's genetically modified salmon grows at double the speed. No more fake IDs for those salmon, they're getting in quick. Canadian scientists took the gene that regulates these growth hormones from salmon, combined it with an ocean pout's DNA, and now we have the ability to simply grow these fish up a few years. Now the taste is the same. In fact, apparently it's even better. This modification gives the Atlantic salmon a fresh taste all year round. The same company that I mentioned earlier, Aqua Bounty, also plans on using these fish to mass produce eggs at its research hatchery in PEI. They then want to ship these eggs to Panama, where they'll grow again twice as fast, but this time in a land-based facility, where they'll wait approval by the FDA. The thing is, neither Canada or the US has done nearly enough safety trials. It's just Aqua Bounty, so we really don't know any long-term effects that this will have on us or the ecosystem. We can't have 9-foot salmon swimming up our rivers every day. It's a bit alarming, I think.
In our number 3 spot today, we have Dolly the sheep. You may have heard of Dolly the sheep before, and that is because she made history in 1996 when she was born. This is because she was the very first mammal to be cloned from an adult somatic cell. The process of cloning to create her involved nuclear transfer from a cell taken from the mammary gland. Basically, they transferred the nucleus from the adult cell into an unfertilized premature egg that had its nucleus removed, and boom, cloned sheep. This was huge for the scientific community because of the fact that it not only showed that cloning can be successful in mammals, but also because it showed that a clone organism can be produced from a mature cell from a specific body part. While Dolly made history, she also sadly only lived a relatively short life. She ended up being euthanized just before her 7th birthday because of the fact that she had a progressive lung disease, as well as arthritis, both of which are said to not be linked to her cloning origins. I guess it's kind of cool that Dolly existed, and the fact that we have these scientific abilities is amazing, but there's also something pretty ominous about it. I just hope we use these powers to do something like bringing back extinct animals rather than just some weird mad scientist type stuff.
And in at number 2, venomous cabbage. As if cabbage wasn't already not appealing, we've now thrown venom into the mix. Lovely. Venomous cabbage, why do we need this? Well, it starts with scorpion venom. It's one of their most vital tools when it comes to self-defense, obviously, so taking that gene and combining it with cabbage could limit our use of pesticides, but at the same time, still prevent those fat caterpillars from harming our crops. Hey, if you have a caterpillar problem, just poison them. There you go, guys. Sounds appetizing too. The cabbage would then naturally produce this scorpion poison, so if any pest came along looking to have a work lunch, they would be long gone before they could even leave a Yelp review. Poor little dudes.
In our number 1 spot today, we have CRISPR babies. This is probably the most well-known case of human genetic engineering, and probably not for the right reasons. On November 25th, 2018, He Jiankui, who is a biophysics researcher, announced, here on YouTube, that his team had successfully created the world's first genome-edited babies. These babies, Lulu and Nana, were born from genetically modified embryos that had been made to be resistant to HIV. Here's the thing, no one is arguing about whether or not this could potentially be an amazing thing for people. The argument is about whether or not it is ethically correct to genetically modify a human before they're even able to be a human yet, especially when the potential risks and long-term effects of this kind were completely unknown. This study was also conducted without the public discussion of the scientific community, which again is the source of quite a bit of controversy. In the end, he ended up being sentenced to jail time as well as being forced to pay a fine. 2 others he worked alongside were also found guilty for having, quote, forged ethical review documents and misled doctors into unknowingly implanting gene-edited embryos into 2 women. At the end of the day, scientific advancements are very cool and exciting, but not at the cost of doing the right thing the right way.
Human-pig hybrids, chickens with dinosaur legs, and plant cells injected into animals. These are terrifying hybrid creatures scientists created in labs. Glowfish are probably one of the most famous examples of genetically modified pets. These little fish, which are actually zebrafish, were engineered in 1999 to glow in the dark. The trick? Scientists inserted a jellyfish gene into the zebrafish, causing them to produce a fluorescent protein that makes them glow under ultraviolet light. The idea behind the glowing fish was actually pretty practical at first. The researchers wanted to use them as a way to detect water pollution. If the water was contaminated, the fish would change color. But as often happens with things that are cool and unusual, people started getting more interested in these things as potential pets. And by 2003, glowfish were available for sale in the United States, and they quickly became a novelty item. But their release raised some ethical questions. Some people thought it was just fun, but others were uncomfortable with the fact that these were pets that were cooked up in a lab. Plus, there were worries about what might happen if these fish were released into the wild, where they could potentially disrupt ecosystems. Glowfish are legal to sell in many places, but they are banned or restricted in others. At the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, scientists injected human stem cells into pig fetuses. What they ended up creating was something that could be described as the first pigman, or a pig with human traits. The goal of the experiment was to study how human and pig cells would interact when fused together, because why not, I guess. What they discovered was pretty wild. Some cells kept their separation, so in the pig's body, there were areas with just human cells and others with just pig cells. But other times, the cells actually fused together and formed a brand new type of DNA that no one had ever seen before. So on the outside, it was a regular pig, but on the inside, it was something much more complicated. An animal with half human, half pig cells throughout its body. The most interesting part was the BLOOD, which was a hybrid of human and pig, and this was a completely new type of BLOOD that had never existed before. Scientists were able to confirm that this was the first time such an experiment had ever been done. Now this one's pretty mind-blowing. For a long time, scientists have been piecing together how dinosaurs evolved into modern birds. And in 2016, a team of researchers in Chile set out to watch this evolution in real time by experimenting with chicken embryos. Their goal was to look at how the leg bones of birds have changed over time and how they connect to their dinosaur ancestors. Dinosaurs, like the ones we see in fossils, had two long bones in their lower legs, the fibula and tibia, which ran parallel to one another. Over millions of years, those bones evolved. When it came to modern birds, the fibula became much shorter and developed a splinter-like end, while the tibia became the dominant bone in the leg. Now the researchers wanted to see if they could make chicken embryos grow that older dinosaur-like leg. So they took a gene that plays a role in this leg development, the IHH gene, and suppressed it in the embryos. And the chicken embryos developed leg bones that looked a lot more like dinosaur legs, with both bones being of similar length and reaching down to the ankle. These dino chickens didn't survive long enough to hatch, but this was the first time scientists could directly observe how bird legs evolved from dinosaur legs in living creatures. Before this experiment, it was just all speculation from fossils. Back in 2018, researchers produced sheep-human embryos. They wanted to see if they could grow organs inside these engineered animals. The end goal is to have body parts that could one day be used for organ donations. Scientists introduced human stem cells into sheep embryos, and while the embryos were mostly sheep, a small fraction, less than 1%, contained human cells. Stem cell biologist Hiro Nakauchi from Stanford University said, "The contribution of human cells so far is very small. It's nothing like a pig with a human face or human brain." And yeah, it was not that, fortunately. Yeah, not a huge percentage here, but the fact that they were able to create sheep embryos with even a small fraction of human DNA is pretty wild. The sheep embryos were destroyed after 28 days, so no sheep-human hybrids were actually born, but the experiment showed that creating organs inside animals with human DNA could be a possible solution to the growing need for organ donors. Oh, Florida, the state has enough wild stuff to worry about than, super snakes, but hybrid pythons are a real problem in Florida. These snakes are massive. Some could grow up to 23 feet long and weigh nearly 200 pounds. Originally, a lot of these snakes were exotic pets, but over time, a lot of them were released into the wild, and by the late 80s, the Burmese pythons had grown into a pretty sizable population in Florida and became a massive problem for the ecosystem. But even worse, researchers studying the pythons in 2018 found something pretty unsettling. Out of 426 snakes they sampled, 13 were hybrids. These hybrids were a mix of Burmese pythons and another species, the Indian python, which had also been released by pet owners. The two species hadn't just recently mixed, they'd been interbreeding for a long time before researchers discovered them. The Indian python is smaller but quicker than the Burmese python, and this combination makes them tougher and more adaptable. In 2009, researchers in Russia and Belarus created genetically modified goats that could produce human breast milk. It wasn't exactly pure human milk, but it was close. It contained 60% of the proteins that make up human milk. Not long after, a team in China took things even further and created a whole herd of 300 cows that could also produce human milk. The idea was to be able to harvest human milk on a large scale, mass produce it, and then sell it in stores. I mean, they figured people would not only want to buy human milk, but human milk that came out of a genetically modified farm animal. The Chinese team originally planned to have their milk in stores by 2014, but the idea didn't exactly catch on as they'd hoped, and the plan got delayed. Back in 1996, a group of scientists at Harvard, led by Joseph and Charles Vacanti, created what became known as the Vacanti mouse. This mouse had a human-shaped ear growing right on its back. Now, this wasn't some weird mutation, it was a planned experiment. They took cow cartilage cells, placed them into a mold shaped like an ear, and then implanted it under the mouse's skin. The ear-shaped mold helped guide the cartilage into the desired shape, and as time passed, the cartilage naturally grew into that shape. The goal was to see if they could create artificial ears on mice and then graft them onto humans. The mouse used was what's called a nude mouse, an immunocompromised species that doesn't reject foreign tissue, so it was perfect for this kind of work. In an interview with Newsweek, Joseph Vacanti joked the mouse had the ear removed and then lived out a happy, normal life, which wasn't true. Lab animals are typically euthanized after experiments, and the original paper mentioned the mice after sacrifice, a term used to describe when animals are killed post-experiment. Ilya Ivanov was a Soviet biologist in the early 20th century who became infamous for his attempt to create a human-ape hybrid. Back in 1910, Ivanov gave a talk about the possibility of creating a human-ape hybrid by using artificial insemination. Then, in the 1920s, he took his theories to French Guiana, where he carried out a series of experiments. He tried inseminating female chimpanzees with human genetic material, but this was unsuccessful. After that, he went back to the Soviet Union and started trying to organize similar experiments, only this time he'd flipped them around, injecting ape genetic material into human volunteers. These plans were thankfully interrupted when the last of his orangutans died. Ivanov's work wasn't just controversial, it was downright disturbing to many, and it led to his eventual arrest and exile. Just this year, scientists at the University of Tokyo managed to combine chloroplasts, which are green energy-producing cells found in plants, with animal cells. The idea here was to give animal cells the ability to create energy from sunlight, a process called photosynthesis, just like plants do. For years, scientists had tried to mix chloroplasts with animal cells, but the animal cells would just digest the chloroplasts within a few hours. That was until the Tokyo team used a specific type of algae called this thing here. But this specific algae could stay active in animal cells. They inserted these chloroplasts into Chinese hamster cells, and to their surprise, the chloroplasts didn't just survive, they kept performing photosynthesis for up to 2 days. The hamster cells even grew faster than usual. Looked like the chloroplasts were giving them some extra energy. Researchers still aren't sure exactly how the chloroplasts and the hamster's mitochondria interact, but they're working on it. And these plantable cells could possibly help us find new ways to create tissues or even new forms of energy. In 2019, reports came out about a team of researchers from the Salk Institute in the United States who'd successfully created the first human-monkey chimera. Led by Professor Juan Carlos Psua Belmont, the team had already produced embryos with small amounts of human cells in pigs and sheep, but this time they went a step further, working with monkeys. The idea was similar to their previous work to create chimeras that might one day be used to grow human organs that could be used for life-saving transplants. These human-monkey chimeras were reportedly only allowed to develop for a few weeks though. The process was carefully monitored and stopped before any of the embryos developed a nervous system or organs, which could raise more serious ethical concerns. These chimeras were also created in China to avoid legal restrictions in other countries. The difference in evolutionary distance between humans and monkeys is much wider than between humans and chimpanzees, but it still opens up the possibility of growing organs for transplants. The chances are slim though that human-monkey hybrids could be brought to full term because of the vast amounts of genetic differences between the species.